So this little booklet, little guide, is what I call the hunger scale. Okay, so this has been a question that I've had a lot in the past, and some of you may have mentioned it to me in the past or asked me about it. So I've got this little guide, and it's just some good questions that you can ask yourself around hunger and feeling hungry and that sort of thing. So like Karen mentioned with the sort of 3 p.m. Fade out sugar rush, that some people need or feel like, this could have some good questions around that. Just to ask yourself, next time that you feel that you are hungry or craving or something like that. So basically, if you've lost touch with how physical hunger and fullness actually feels, then this hunger scale can obviously help you tune back in. Okay. There's many reasons that people feel hungry, and we'll cover that down a little bit further. And I'll give you a cool little acronym that I learned a while ago, and it's stuck with me. I have elaborated a little bit in here, but the basic acronym can be super powerful as well. So just write that down when we do get to that if you want. So how to use the hunger scale. So number one, ask yourself, am I really physically hungry? So there's a hunger level scale below where you can determine your level of hunger. There's also a table on the following page that describes what physical hunger typically feels like as well. So when you are feeling that hunger feeling or that craving feeling, you can replace, hunger with craving as well if you want in this example. When you are feeling that hunger or craving or something before you eat, then you can rate it. Okay, so if your hunger is a 3 on the scale, then start eating. If you think you're on the scale of a 4, maybe wait half an hour and assess again, and stop eating when you reach number 6. So that'll make sense once we get down to it. Now, thinking about any other reasons you may want to eat or think you want to eat. If you rate yourself 6 or above on the hunger scale, think about other reasons that may be triggering you to eat as well. So these could be boredom, habits, places, situations, people, emotions as well. Okay, so this is where the acronym, I've kind of taken a little bit of a different spin on it and given it some different sort of ideas to bounce off. But the acronym that stood out to me is HALT, so HALT. And if you think each letter, so the H stands for hunger. Okay, so am I actually hungry? The A stands for angry. So am I angry? The L stands for lonely. And the T stands for tired. So, if you're feeling any of the boredom or, places, situation, people, emotions, habits sort of popping up and you're feeling hungry or craving or something like that, just halt and ask yourself, am I feeling hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? There's some good, I guess, points that you can ask yourself to realize, okay, is it actual hunger that I'm feeling? Or am I just pissed off? Or am I lonely? Or am I tired, bored? Those sorts of things you can ask yourself. Okay, does that make sense for everyone? Little nod if it does. Yeah, cool. If you got any questions around it at all, just unmute yourself and jump in at any stage. So number 4 on the guide, so plan and take control. Okay, so if you suspect that your hunger is due to any psychological factors, instead of eating, try doing something else. Distract yourself, with another activity such as walking, chatting, calling a friend, exercising, meditating, They're just a few examples that you can go through to do that. So apologies for the screaming 18-month-old in the background. So they're just a few things. If it's psychological, if it's around the emotions and that sort of thing, if you don't know how to deal with the emotions, if you don't know how to process them at the time, maybe just distract yourself so that you're not walking to the fridge, you're not walking to the pantry, you're not, reaching in the bottom drawer or someone else's bottom drawer in Karen's case. Those sorts of things can play a massive part by distracting yourself. Okay, now I'm not a big fan of distracting yourself forever. There's only so long that you can distract yourself before it builds up. So it's more about getting through that period, but also dealing with it in the end. Okay. So hunger scale tips. Okay. So number 1, eat regular throughout the day. Remember to eat regular meals in order to avoid reaching 1 or 2 on the scale. So this tends to happen if you ignore your hunger signals. It can also happen at busy points during the day where you skip your meals. Okay, so on the scale, when you're at about a 1 or a 2, you can experience a loss of control. You can overeat, make poor food choices, easily reach a 7 or more on the scale by doing those. Okay. So there's a few tips here if you find yourself at the bottom of the scale, so 1 or 2, is just to eat a little bit of something. Okay, so a piece of fruit or a cracker or a little protein snack or something like that, just to bump you up a little bit on the scale. Okay, so if you haven't realized already that 1 or 2 on the scale is where you're ravenous, where you losing control of your food intake and that sort of thing, where you can't control it and you're just going for whatever's in front of you or around you. So if you find yourself at that 1 or 2, just have a little bit of something. As hard as it may be to stop at that little bit, and easier said than done sometimes, have a little bit of something, then go back to the distraction method. Distract yourself a little bit, do something to just move that little bit higher on the scale. So after you wait 10 to 15 minutes and see how your hunger level is now, if you'd still rate your hunger as a 3, then eat your planned meal and eat normally until you reach a 5 or a 6 on that scale. All right. So that there is obviously if you are skipping meals or under eating and not enough throughout the day, that's when you can find yourself needing to bring back control. Okay. Sometimes we feel like we lose control and that sort of thing. And if you can do this little section here and bring that control back into you, then it's going to make a huge difference. Number 2 is to keep hydrated. So remembering to keep fluid levels up so that you can recognize and feel real hunger when it's not confused with thirst. Okay, so a lot of people might be dehydrated and they might actually be thirsty when they think that they're hungry. So if you notice that on a regular basis, have some water, drink up, see how that goes. Okay. Number 3 here is personalize the scale. So your own experiences may differ from this and from those described on the scale. So you could always experiment with developing your own scale in your own words as well to measure how it is in a way that makes sense for you. All right. So this is just a guide, really. It's not set in stone. If, like I said before, if something doesn't resonate with you, then change it a little bit till it does resonate. Go in with an open mind and, just take what you feel that resonates with you and go with that. Okay. Number 4, use the hunger awareness diary. So using the diary attached below to make a note of your thoughts or feelings linked to your eating and record how hungry you are before, during, and after eating. Reflecting on these can be a powerful and effective way to find out more about what influences your own particular eating habits. So I'm a huge fan of a diary of some description, a journal, not just a food tracking journal or food tracking diary, more about how you feel, the emotions, before, during, and after. So I recommend most people, as a rough sort of guide, general guide, is, taking note of how you're feeling if you're cooking something, if you're making a meal, how are you feeling while you're making it? Are you angry? Are you lonely, tired? Are you frustrated? All those sorts of things. And that can play a part on what you choose to cook or have as a meal as you go into it. Same with during and after. Okay, so just monitor how you're feeling. If you're surrounded by, friends, family, loved ones, having a nice, happy meal, then you're going to be feeling a lot better eating that meal, no matter what the food. You're going to be more satisfied. You're going to digest it easier. You're going to process the whole meal a lot easier and better if you are in that state during and after as well. Flip side of that, if you're angry, lonely, tired, all that sort of stuff, frustrated, rushing during your meal, you're not going to digest it very well. You're not going to sometimes not even going to remember that you have had a meal. And you might be on the run during the day, have your lunch on the run, and an hour later you're like, oh shit, did I even have lunch? I don't feel full. I'll just have something else, or I'll have a chocolate bar or something like that. So it's just about being aware during as well. Okay, so reflecting can be a powerful and effective way to see some patterns come out of that. All right, so now we kick into the scale. So the hunger level scale here. So 1 and 2 is, that bottom of the scale, beyond hunger. Okay, so you may have a headache or dizziness and lack of concentration. Your body feels totally out of energy. You might need to feel that you need to lie down. Number 2, you're feeling irritable, cranky, little energy, and maybe nauseous as well. Okay, so that's on the extreme end of the scale. So I know I've been there before. I've been the 1 and 2 before, and yeah, it's not a good place to be. Ideally, obviously in the green, we want to be in and be aware of as well. So number 3, your stomach feels empty and the urge to eat is strong. Okay, so that urge to eat is strong. You start to think about food and your body is giving you the signal that you might want to eat at number 4. So you're not quite as hungry. Number 5, your body has had enough food to keep going and is physically and psychologically just starting to feel satisfied. And number 6 in that green section is you are fully satisfied and full up, but not over full. So not overly satisfied. Yeah, you felt in control during the meal. You didn't overeat, didn't go back for that 2nd or 3rd or 4th plate. Didn't fill up on that dessert that just tipped you over the edge. Okay. So hopefully you've all sort of been in that green section and you know what it feels like. Yeah. So that's where the journal comes in, the diary, to notice those things. Number 7 is obviously on the higher end of that scale. You're feeling past the point of satisfaction, yet you can still find room for that little bit more. So that might be the going back for 2nds or 3rds or something. Your body might say no, but your mind says yes. So you take a few more bites, or, even drinks. If you, have a big meal and then you might wash it down with something as well. So you just got to be mindful of that. These haven't lined up properly, so I'll just have to fix that. Number 8 is your stomach is starting to really ache. You probably know you shouldn't have had more, but it tasted so good. You know, you just had to have that little bit more because it tasted so good. But you've tipped yourself, you know, on that extra full end of the scale again. Number 9 is you now feel really uncomfortable, heavy, tired, and bloated. Okay. And number 10 is beyond full. This is a typical Christmas Day sort of feeling. You know, you're physically miserable. You don't want to move or can't move, and you feel like you never want to look at food again. Not a good point to reach, but I know I've been there probably every Christmas. And usually ends up with a Christmas afternoon nap, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's totally bad, but on a regular basis, that's when it can be. Okay. Cool. Does that all make sense to everyone? Yeah. Any questions? Any feedback? Any comments on that scale?
No, all good. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good, pretty accurate.
Yeah, it'd be good to do it for a few weeks just to see how it goes.
Yes, definitely. Yep. Awesome. Cool. All right. Moving down. So, the little sections here is some ideas on how you can distinguish between physical hunger and psychological hunger. Okay, so there can be a big difference. There can be a slight difference, but there's usually always a difference. Okay, so physical hunger increases gradually, where psychological hunger can make a sudden appearance out of nowhere. And as it can make a sudden appearance, it can make a sudden disappearance just as quick as well. So you've got to be aware of that. Psychological, it can come all of a sudden, but then it can go all of a sudden as well. Whereas physical hunger, true hunger, it's gradual. Okay, physical hunger, an apple would do. Psychological, you would want a certain type of food, and it certainly tends not to be an apple. So that's where the chocolate, the alcohol, or whatever may come into play that little bit more and appeal that little bit more than an apple. Physical hunger can't wait for food. You need to have something to eat soon. Okay. Psychological, you want food now, sense of urgency or panic around eating and finding food, and that's something that you have to eat right away, not, you know, you can wait for that food. Okay. Physical, a response to your body's definite need. So, you know, rumbling tummy, those sorts of hunger feelings, genuine hunger feelings, are a lot different to the psychological hunger. So feeling upset, bored, tired, lonely, you know, those sorts of emotional feelings as well. Physical, so a deliberate choice eaten with awareness. Okay. Or making impulsive choices, eating quickly, and you may not even tasted the food. So like I mentioned earlier, is, you know, that lunch on the run or something like that, you may not even taste it. You may not even remember that you had food. So you're hungry in an hour, half hour after just having that. Okay. So make that deliberate choice and eat with awareness. Okay. Physical hunger, you're having that sense of satisfaction after eating. Psychological, you still want more or a different type of food. For example, sweet after salty, or vice versa as well for some people. Some people want salty foods after sweet, or fatty foods or something like that. You know, some people after fatty foods crave sweet foods. So it's just about realizing those patterns for you and going through that. No guilt when you're, you know, satisfying your physical hunger, and emotional or psychological is lots of guilt and promises about next time. So that's when you're feeling guilty about what you've done, what you've eaten, and just beating yourself up about it, and promises about next time. It's like waking up the morning after a big night out, drinking, eating, all that sort of stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm never doing that again. But it happens again for most people. So it's about finding those patterns and the psychological triggers around that. So here's an example of the hunger level diary. So it's a basic example. You can adjust it, change it to your wording or whatever if you want. So basically time, so record your time that you are filling it in before eating, during, and after. Okay, so I recommend look at it from a 90-minute as a minimum window. So, before eating, if you want to look at it from 30 minutes before eating, cool during. So pull the during part of it, 30 minutes as well while you're eating, and the after, call that 30 minutes as well. Okay, so 30, 60, 90, look at it from that perspective as a minimum. If you wanted to expand it even more, you could look at it from 60, 60, 60. Okay, 45, 45, 45, or something like that. Whatever resonates with you and you think would work and benefit you, then you can look at that. All right, so before eating, you can look at where you're eating, who you're eating with, thoughts and feelings before you eat, hunger before eating as well on the scale. Food eaten, obviously just writing what you had as a overall summary. After eating, rate your hunger or fullness after eating, and do you feel satisfied? If not, what do you think would have satisfied you? Okay, so you can also change that or add in any notes around how you feel after eating. So a big indicator of a meal that hasn't sat well or doesn't work well for you, or you have a reaction to without having a total bad reaction, is if you want to nap after a meal. If you want to nap within sort of 30 to 90 minutes after eating, you shouldn't want to have a nap. You shouldn't want to, or you shouldn't be in a food coma. You shouldn't be wanting to have a sleep off that meal. Okay, we should be eating to energize ourselves, to get us, in between meals, give us that energy and that sort of thing, and to nourish us. We shouldn't be eating and feeling the opposite. So this is where you can take note of that. If you notice that you've eaten a certain meal or whatever, or you've got a emotional sort of thing happening before, during, and after, if you do this enough, you can see some patterns pop up. Okay, so you might see a certain meal or a certain emotion come up for you, and then after eating, you might notice that you're crashing. You're angry, you're short-tempered, or just want to nap or something like that. Okay, so that's the power of a diary or a journal around that sort of thing. Does that all make sense? Yep, cool. Any questions on that at all?
No, all good. Thanks, Glen.
Yep, excellent. All right, so final thoughts. The hunger scale teaches you to listen to your body. So here's some ideas on how to become more mindful around meal times, which in turn will help you to know when to start and stop eating. With practice, you'll be able to manage your hunger, feel more in control of your habits, and enjoy meals mindfully. So before you eat, concentrate your attention on your stomach and give yourself a number on the hunger scale. You should naturally feel hunger, so number 3 on the scale, around every 3 to 5 hours after your last meal. Okay, that will vary with everyone as well, and what you are eating and that sort of thing. If your hunger is not coming from your stomach area, you're probably feeling hunger due to an emotional state or out of a habit as well. So try to find an alternative way to comfort yourself rather than comfort eating. Okay, so some of us get in a habit of doing a certain task and you feel that you need a certain food or or something to get you through that task as well. So look at it from a habit-based perspective as well. During a meal, so eat slowly and mindfully to allow yourself to feel how full you are getting. Listen to your body when it tells you that you are no longer hungry. Look out for the signals telling you that you're comfortably full, but try not to reach the point of feeling stuffed. Stop when you're halfway through your meal to check your fullness if you want. If you're still feeling hungry, then continue eating another half of your meal. Stop again and reassess. This method is a good way to make sure you don't overeat. Okay, and finishing a meal. So stop eating when you're around 5 or 6 on that scale. Stopping at a higher number or convincing yourself that you need to leave a completely clean plate means you have probably taken in more food than your body needs. So this point here, having a completely clean plate, that has been me pretty much my whole life. I grew up, we weren't well off or anything like that. We grew up on farms and around farms and stuff like that, and food was not wasted. If it was on my plate, I was made to eat it. I wasn't allowed to leave the table until my plate was finished. I still remember arguing and crying at the table that I didn't want to eat certain foods or didn't want to eat everything on my plate. And, my mom, my grandparents wouldn't let me leave the table until my plate was clear. So, nothing against how I was brought up or anything like that. It's just how it was. And, still to this day, I don't like food wastage, and I feel that I have to finish everything on my plate. And I catch myself telling my kids as well, make sure you finish everything on your plate, or you can't have dessert until everything on your plate is finished, and that sort of thing. So being aware of that has changed things for me to say, okay, maybe I won't grab a big plate out of the cupboard. Maybe I'll grab a small plate and I'll still finish all the food on my plate, but it's a smaller plate. So in essence, I'm eating less food, but I'm still completely cleaning the plate and I guess doing my job, if you want to look at it that way. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that resonates with any of you, but that was my upbringing to a T. So hopefully that's helped.